very quickly, I'll emphasize first certain issues. I think, as Anthony had also said, that health is a public good, and if health is a public good, it cannot be a commodity, uh, and that is what it should be. And therefore, the role of the private sector gets completely diminished. The role of insurance gets virtually eliminated. Because if health is a public good, it has to be financed, and the government is spending out of taxpayer money over 9,000 rupees per capita. So that's one class of people who get good benefits. There's another class of people who are covered by statutory social security like ESIC, okay, which is actually the lower end of the blue collar working class, because there's an income ceiling of 21,000. If you earn more than 21,000, you can opt out of the uh, ESIC cover. So that's another class of people who have some assured health care. And if they have contributed for 5 years, then they get, with a very small annual payment, they can get cover for life. And ESIC services, like CGHS, there are no upper limits. I mean, in terms of healthcare, I mean, you get everything that is available is made available to you. Similarly, there's the defense services who spend as much or probably more than what the CGHS spends per capita. You have the railways, which have a very good healthcare system. And incidentally, railways also looks into public health. It's not only about hospital care and running dispensaries. It's also about public health, because there are these huge colonies in which they manage the entire public health of that colony. So railways is a good kind of benchmark, because they spend about 4,000 rupees per capita. And various surveys have shown us that if you spend about 4,000 rupees per capita, if that's the government's budget, for example, then we will be close to that 2.5% of GDP, which our national health policy talks about. So as Shailaja pointed out, there's a certain middle class which is left out of the, according to me, there are three types of middle classes. One which I referred to earlier, who get all the social security benefits in government or from the under the Factories Act or the ESIC and whatever legislation is there. Then there's another group of people who work in the private sector and where the employers pay for the health insurance. So all the health insurance policies which are there is basically covering employees of companies, or they may not be employees, but they could be clients also. Like, you can actually go through a public sector bank as a client and get insurance which is one third the premium cost which you would get as a uh, insured person. So if I have to today, being 64 years old, if I have to get an health insurance policy for me and my spouse for even a 5 lakh, a low 5 lakh cover, the insurance companies will charge me close to 45 to 50,000 rupees, which I can't afford because I'm not a pensioner. I live completely out of my savings and no longer working. So as Mr. Sarma also said, I mean, insurance becomes very expensive, and it has become very expensive. As you grow older, when your needs are more, the insurance company actually doesn't want you. So these are some of the problems. I think Sarma's presentation was very good in that sense that you actually made statements which kind of demolishes the foundations of insurance. That proves that the health insurance design in this country is completely faulty. It's a faulty design, because the way it is designed, I mean, having all those, if you're covered for 1 lakh, then you can only get 1% for the beds, whereas the market is kind of exploding with the rising prices and so on. So I think in India, insurance is basically a mechanism which has helped that 4% of hospital beds, which Shaila just spoke about, the corporate hospitals and maybe some of the other larger hospitals, let's say 10%. of hospital beds to get occupied. You and me will not be able to afford care in those hospitals if we didn't have an insurance cover. Because if there was no insurance, let me tell you, corporatization of healthcare would not have happened in this country. Because there was a point in time when insurance was still very low. I mean, when it was the era of the mediclaims of the public sector insurance companies, that time the occupancy of hospitals, especially the larger hospitals, was less than 40 to 30 or even 30%. When insurance comes in, the occupancy goes to 80, 90%. It is clearly, if you look at actually, if somebody does an audit of these large private hospitals, you will find that they have two major sources of income. One is via insurance, clients who have insurance cover, and the other is medical tourism. These are two large kind of incomes where these hospitals have. So as far as insurance goes, I think for a country like India, it cannot afford the insurance route. So PMJY is has faced a lot of issues, a lot of frauds have happened, and it's not. So I think out of that Ayushman Bharat, the one leg which I think should be knocked out is the PMJY. Whereas the health and wellness center, which even Anthony pointed out, I mean, gave good examples from different parts of the country, and even I have seen that if you set up the health and wellness centers, which is the second leg of the Ayushman Bharat, if you actually put money, now the insurance part got money from the budget, 6,400 crores. That's the latest allocation for PMJAY. Whereas there's been no increase or no significant increase for the sub-centers budget across the country. Kerala is perhaps one example where a little more is being spent because Kerala converted all the sub-centers into family health centers. And I don't know if they actually increased a lot of the budget, but since you don't get a breakdown in the budget document, it's difficult to assess. So clearly, when you look at India as a whole and across most of the states, out-of-pocket expenditures have been galloping over the years. And probably we still don't have the data for 2021, where we will see, I think, a huge jump thanks to the whole corona crisis, where people have been forced to seek healthcare in the private sector, or they have had to sell assets and so on, much more than they used to do earlier. So we will know that soon. Uh, Even the insurance business has increased substantially. I've been looking at the monthly insurance business reports, which IRDA brings out. And my estimate is that the figures are still not out by IRDA, but my estimate is that for 2021, the health insurance premiums, all categories included, would touch 63 to 65,000 crores. It was 50,000 crores in the previous year, but that is where it seems to be going towards. Uh, and within the health insurance thing, while in terms of numbers, the government funded health insurance is a huge number of people, something like nearly 35 uh, uh, crores of population covered via the PMJY and other state schemes. But in terms of premium, the government only kind of spends 4 to 5,000 crores in getting that health insurance cover for the below poverty line population. So again, this approach, insurance as a concept, the foundation is risk pooling. Now, what happens at the ground level in insurance is that if I know I'm going to need some major surgery or something, what we call cream skimming happens a lot in insurance. So then I will buy, as an individual, I will buy insurance. Okay, now I'm at risk. I can get a heart attack, I can get a stroke, or I could get cancer or something like that. And that is one reason why, as you grow older and you are at greater risk to these kind of ailments, the insurance premiums also gallop, and which should not be actually happening. And I mean, if it's a kind of a equitable model, so that is why insurance, which is relies on market principles, uh, is something that we don't want. Another arena that I would like to address is in terms of our public health system. And yes, Corona exposed the fault lines of the public health system very badly. At least in the first phase or the first cycle of Corona, uh, just in the previous year, we did at least good firefighting. I think what I got out of Shailaja's presentation is that the public health system, though it is uh, uh, poorly funded and the infrastructure is weak, etc., but they are at least capable of doing good firefighting. And that is what it did. That is what the BMC did. They did good firefighting. So we did good firefighting to eliminate smallpox. We are doing some firefighting to eliminate polio, and so on and so forth. So there could be various examples. So this, whenever there is an epidemic or a pandemic, we respond to it, but we do not create a system of healthcare which would take care of all these issues when they happen, and we don't have to do firefighting. Yes, actually, I missed something. I mean, I was talking about the three middle classes. So one, which I explained, the second, and the third is what Shailaja showed at the 36 crore. Probably it's more. A population which neither can afford insurance, nor are they are, because they are not below the poverty line, they cannot get benefits from the government. So they are the people who are the most vulnerable within, as far as healthcare access is concerned, especially when there's a catastrophe. They can manage the day-to-day illnesses and outpatient care, etc. Incidentally, the out-of-pocket expenditure, about 60% of out-of-pocket expenditure is for outpatient care. So hospital care is just maybe 30-35%. And again, within that's 60%, which is for outpatient care, about 80% of that is on medicines. So, if the government can do a simple thing within the public system, which was set out in the HLEG report and the 12th five-year plan, that to provide free medicines in all public facilities. If you do that, and you are sure that when I go to a public facility, I get free diagnostics, I get free medicine, the footfall will increase. And this has been shown in Maharashtra, where there's community-based monitoring and planning happening in those 16 districts. Footfall increased because there was pressure from below for the public health system to respond to the needs of people. So people will go, if they don't find a particular medicine, you're giving a prescription, you send it to the DHO. And the DHO is flooded with SMSs on his phone, and that he has no choice but to see that procurement enables that particular PHC or CHC from where that thing has come. So basically what I'm trying to say is that if we had a good, robust, comprehensive primary healthcare system in this country, we would not have kind of been left in the lurch when Corona hit us, whether in the first wave or the second wave. And Shailaja gave various examples of various districts. I think there's another outstanding example of Nandurbar district, where Dr. Rajendra, whatever, he's an Adivasi doctor, who had the foresight. I mean, Nandurbar was not at all affected, not a single death in the first wave. Okay, but he planned for oxygen cylinders, and he has surplus of oxygen supplies, which is he's giving to neighboring districts. So there was a good district collector who kind of responded, who had the foresight, even when his district was not affected. So, but yes, I mean, these individual stories are good, but then I think if we have a proper system, then every district would have the same kind of story to tell. As regards, again, the PMJAY, I mean, the latest data that one has is for September 2020 where 15,500 crores since the inception of PMJY has been paid out as benefits, whether it was through a trust fund or through insurance, etc. But 75% of the payout went to private hospitals. So in effect, what this means is that public funds are subsidizing the private sector via insurance or other modes of financing. So I think, uh, and there's a tendency for the Ayushman Bharat PMJAY portal to hide these figures. You get them in some corner of a policy brief which was written by the National Health Authority. They bring out policy briefs. But unlike the RSBY portal, which was very transparent, which gave you detailed information on on the types of illnesses being treated, gender differentials by type of different ailments for different states, etc. So those kind of details you don't see on the PMJAY website. They bring out a fancy coffee table annual report every year with a lot of color in it, but no substance in it. So that's the unfortunate part. There's only one page where there are some blocks which say we spent as they don't give annual data, they give you data as of September so and so we have spent 14,000 crores or whatever. So that's the unfortunate part. Complete lack of transparency is there. In fact, the insurance sector has more transparency in that term that at least IRDA brings out an annual report which gives you reasonable amount of. I would like more data, but like state-wise data should be published, but it doesn't publish it. It just tells you that there are 4 or 5 states which account for 60% of premiums income, and they mention that. And Maharashtra and Karnataka are 2 of the prominent ones. So insurance is an issue. The poor investment in the public health system is an issue that we need to deal with. And I think unless we do that, whether there may be another corona third wave or whether there may be another different pandemic or any other kind of basic healthcare issue, we are not going to be able to handle it. And our system, as I keep saying, is only has the capacity to do firefighting if you spend only 1% of GDP. If you actually double that, I mean, you will be able to fill up the vacancies. There are huge vacant positions in across the country of doctors. In primary health centers, 40% positions are vacant. I mean, how can you run a primary healthcare center if 40% of the doctors are missing? Or community health centers, which are supposed to have specialists, 70% vacancies for pediatricians, for gynecologists, and so on, whichever the specialists are required at that facility. District hospitals have a shortage of 40% of doctors. So how can you run a public health system with these kind of deficits? I mean, human resource deficits, medicine supplies are not there, their diagnostic equipment is not working, X-ray machines or MRI scans wherever there are, or ultrasound machines. So there are all these issues and they cannot be dealt with in 1% of GDP. You need to increase the budget substantially. And even that 1% is not fully spent. The health ministry has a history of spending only 80 or maximum 85% of the budget which is passed by parliament and the state legislatures across the country. Some states do better than the others, but generally the overall average is that. So my final word is we need to strengthen, bring in comprehensive primary health care, building on this health and wellness center concept, because what was missing in the primary healthcare system in the country was robust curative care, which is what care for NCDs, for access to medicines and diagnostics. If that is brought in at the level which is of 3,000 population, which is closer to people, then I think the faith and the credibility of the public health system, the faith in the public health system and its credibility will increase and footfalls will definitely increase. And we have seen this where, so there are states like the northeastern states like Mizoram, Sikkim, who spend 5 to 6,000 rupees per capita. Even Lakshadweep does that so well. Incidentally, Lakshadweep was one state which did not have a single case of coronavirus till the administrator changed and he opened Kochi airport and the ships or whatever to the port to travel to Lakshadweep. And after that happened, within 15 days, Lakshadweep saw 1,000 cases and a few deaths. This was purely an administrative action which went wrong terribly. And we know what the mess is happening in Lakshadweep. I mean, it's a kind of a Hindutva, another kind of Hindutva experiment. I will not get into that. So I think I'll stop there because